In this video, I'm going to show you my favorite method for getting all of these tomatoes reduced down so that we can make pasta sauce and ketchup and barbecue sauce and it won't be watery. If you want to see all about it, stay tuned. So we have a bunch of tomatoes from the garden, and our garden season is past done, but these have been continuing to ripen. And today we're going to get a big batch of them reduced so that we can then use them when we can different items. Some things we like to can with these are pasta sauce, ketchup, barbecue sauce, enchilada sauce. I've made tomato soup before. Anything that is a tomato base, this is a really good method. So to get started, what you need is a big pot. Actually, today we're going to use 2 big pots to really get a bunch of tomatoes reduced. And you need a blender of some sort. I use a food processor for this. I'm just going to take a bunch of tomatoes and get them rinsed off real quick. This is also a good opportunity for me to sort tomatoes because, as you will see, some of these are past their prime and they are just going to go in the compost. I have our compost bucket out, our bucket we're going to toss everything into, and now we're just going to get everything cut up. So to do this, I'm just going to rough chop these tomatoes and throw them in a food processor. Sometimes I cut out the core, other times I do not cut out the core, and I just go really fast. I don't peel the skins off of these because eventually I'm probably going to run these through a food mill, so it's kind of skipping a step.
I, however, will not run these through the food mill for certain recipes like salsa.
And these bad parts go in the compost, and we just get through them until we can get them blended up over on the side here. You probably noticed these are all sorts of different varieties, kind of just what we have at this point. It'll take a little less time for you to do a project like this if you have a paste or a sauce tomato because the amount of water in your tomatoes won't be nearly as much. I mean, this is a Cherokee Purple. Look at all that water in there. So that is going to take a long time to reduce down. Some of these you can see are past their prime, as I said, and I'm cutting off some bad spots. But once you cut off some of the bad spots, like cutting all that off, this is still a perfectly fine tomato to eat. Cut that little piece off too. Get that off, although the food mill will take care of that. And it's a perfectly fine tomato to make sauce and all sorts of stuff. Okay, we have our blender full over here. We're going to get the lid on, just blend it up.
My favorite way to quickly and easily cut tomatoes is using a serrated knife like this. It's definitely a nice tool to have when cutting tomatoes.
That's about good for what I'm doing today. Just going to throw it in our big pot. And get some more in there. So we have our 2 pots full of tomatoes that have been blended up, and now what we're going to do, we're just going to stick them in the oven. When I stick them in the oven, right now I'm going to set the oven to about 350 and let them cook because I'm going to be watching them and stirring them periodically. We did only get the red varieties and a couple other varieties. There were some green varieties in there like Anise Noir and Cherokee Purple's a purple looking variety, and we had a bunch of different varieties, but I kept all of these ones. These are sunrise sauce. I kept these off to the side to make a batch of something that is only this color. So we'll get these done in the future. This is a really great method for reducing your tomatoes because it doesn't make a mess splattering tomatoes all over your kitchen. You don't have to stand and monitor it and stir the pot constantly if you were to do it on the stovetop. It's kind of just set it and forget it for a little while and come back in a couple hours, give it a stir, check on things, and continue from there. When I get this done, what I will do is I will run it through a food mill, and then if I have time to can whatever I'm going to be canning, whether it's salsa, pasta sauce, whatever, then I might can it then. Otherwise, I just put this in a plastic container with a lid and put it in the freezer, and it's ready to can when I have time to do a big canning project. This is a really good way to get your tomatoes ready to go for canning season instead of just placing whole tomatoes in your freezer. I've seen a lot of people do that, but the amount of tomatoes that we grow, we don't have the freezer room to do that, and we have other things that need to be in the freezer versus tomatoes that don't really need to be in the freezer. So if I reduce them first, it saves so much room if I do decide to freeze them to deal with them and can them when I have time. So let's get them in the oven. I'm going to set the oven to 350, and then I'm just going to put them in. I do have both of the racks all the way on the bottom so that it can accommodate these big pots. All right, there we go.
As these tomatoes cook and some of the water comes off, I periodically take them out and stir them. When they come out of the oven, they look like this. Notice the foam on top? If you don't stir them often enough, this foam will create a blackened crust, and you don't want that in whatever you end up making with the tomatoes. Stirring the pots every 2 hours or so will prevent that from happening. You may also notice that this foam kind of bubbles up and expands. Keep this in mind when you're filling your pots and don't overfill your pots. I like to leave about 4 to 5 inches at least of space above the tomatoes to allow for this foam. I like to wipe the sides of the pots down with a spatula in order to prevent any excess browning, and then time to pop them back into the oven for them to continue to cook and reduce.
It is now 8 p.m. and we put these in at 11 this morning, and they are now at about the consistency that I like them at for making a bunch of different stuff. See that? This method is so nice because it is set it and forget it. I only stirred these maybe 3 times and they're ready to go. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to let these cool off. I'm actually going to put them outside because it's pretty cold outside with a lid on them. And then tomorrow I'll be making a batch of something. I think we're doing spaghetti sauce tomorrow. But if you didn't have time to do that, you could always put these after they're cool in some sort of a container and put them out in a freezer and then do it whenever you have time. I wanted to show just how far down these have reduced. I think when I put this one in, it was up here where this black line is, and it has went down that much. That is considerable. And on this pot, it was probably right up here, and it's went down that much. So we didn't lose any of that flavor from the tomatoes. So that's a really nice thing about this method. It just kind of takes a little bit of time. Reducing tomatoes this way is also pretty user-friendly because the pots don't seem to be very hard to clean. When all is said is done, you just get a little scrubber and scrub that after it soaks for a little bit with maybe some Dawn on it, and it seems to come right off. So cleanup is not a super huge deal in my experience reducing tomatoes in the oven this way.
If you're having trouble cleaning your pots, these copper scrubbing pads really get the job done, and they're really handy to have for this kind of a job.
Well, that's it for how we like to reduce our tomatoes and get them so that they are at a good thickness for making a bunch of different stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the kind of stuff we're putting out in our channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.